No, there is that.
Okay, let's see, Rachel, would you like to do roll call?
Yeah. Patrick White.
Here.
Teresa Johnson.
Here.
Deanna Mulder.
Here.
Jamie Melky here.
Here. Good. Got a quorum. Let's see, did everybody look at the minutes and minutes look okay? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, second. Okay. Great. I'm not sure there's any board communications, anything Victor let you know about.
I'm aware of them.
Just one thing that's, just to remind people, one of the other boards, there were some observations about people using cell phones the whole time during meetings. And I don't think anybody here does it well, but obviously if you have an emergency going on and then have your cell phone out, but yep. All right, public comment then.
Well,
You're actually part of the board, but yeah.
I just respond to questions from the validity of horticulture. I have no public comment.
Great. Okay, getting on then to the agenda. Rachel, how about if you pull up the street tree plan first? It's a little out of order from what the agenda says.
Street tree plan.
Hold on. So this is just sort of, and I should have written draft on here, sort of just a beginning idea about what our plan could be in this. And telling Victor, I like the idea of us having a master plan about what to do about the street trees and not just handling it so haphazardly, you know. Okay, let's put some trees in where we put them, but let's actually have a plan that we're working towards. So this is my first stab at it. And, you know, today I think we'll just try and see what everybody else thinks about it and anything we want to add, delete, change, prioritize differently. We'll talk about it and I guess we'll just have conversation as we go. The vision, this is, don't have to read it. It's a quote from our master plan. The tree plan. Yep. And so this, I think, was in a handout earlier about why have street trees. So again, just to reiterate, you know, to support the benefits of the city's urban canopy, to create an attractive and orderly streetscape in the city, to define primary and secondary corridors, to support the separation of vehicular and pedestrian traffic, to provide shade on sidewalks and in city neighborhoods, and to calm traffic. Any other ideas on that? Okay. And then the next question is, well, why have a plan? I'm going to have to get up there. Here, no, I can read it off here. Okay, kind of three main things. One, to ensure that any proposed tree locations don't interfere with city infrastructure, such as overhead or underground utilities, to ensure that the planting of new trees supports the principles of good design and the city's streetscape, including things such as scale and repetition, and to ensure that the trees that are planted will have the best opportunity for good health through species selection, taking into account hardiness, mature size, moisture needs, sensitivity to road salt, susceptibility to deer browsing, and invasiveness of roots. And that's just a little image of right tree, right place. And this, I think what Victor sent out was one from 2020. So this actually is the current one. And I can send it out to everybody. Do you guys have this or have you been sent this? I think I sent it to Gail. Maybe.
That's this year.
November 2022.
No, that's the goals
different.
actually.
That's
This
the
is,
different.
yeah. How about if I send it to everybody?
Okay.
Does that have to go through the city manager's office? If you communicate outside of this room?
I think if we're
It's not
not
regular
having
meeting.
discussion, it's okay. Or Rachel could send it to Victor on Monday. Yep, that's better. Maybe we should do that. That's not a either. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, it's right, pretty right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just making sure the date on it's right, Rachel. The one that Victor sent out, I think was from 2020.
The one I have is 2022.
I did.
Yep,
too.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, and this is, the second or third iteration of this, and we add things to it that, I think it's been helpful, like. This, we want to put a tree somewhere, looking at what our best options are. We've also discussed, how we could get this to the public to where it might help them. And making good choices for trees. Okay, next one, these are some ideas about planning units, and so if you want to go to the next slide, Rachel, this is that graphic that we were looking at, updated with what we had discussed. Primary corridors being 119 coming into town, Main Street, 119 going out of town, West Bluff, of course, Lake Street, Hoyt. We have State Street. I think that's it. Secondary corridors. I don't know if we've got too many. Some of these in my mind are starting to fall into like neighborhood streets, like that they do get used more, like Ann Street, Spring Street, Arbor Street. Thoughts on that? Do you want to just leave them as secondary or doesn't matter that much?
Call order. What part of the agenda is this, Dan?
This is the street tree plan.
And
This is number 3.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing this on the.
It's under,
Old business.
and
You
what
go to
are
the
what
agenda.
are- What is?
Street
the board
tree plan.
Voting on.
Pardon me?
So what are you asking the board to do?
Just provide input. This is sort of a rough draft of what we might eventually get to. So you'll see kind of in the planning process later, I think identifying what planning units we want to work with would be like sort of a first step. So we've got the main corridors, which are in red. We have the secondary corridors in yellow. And then the green areas that are kind of segmented have just been divided into neighborhoods. So I think as we, rather than trying to take on everything all at once, that we prioritize, a couple things every year to work on. Any other thoughts on that? Just sort of as a general guideline.
I support the way they've been categorized here.
Okay. All right. Yep. And then the previous slide, I think actually just summarizes what falls where. You have to go into that in depth. Do you have any comments there?
What criteria are we using to define our map locations? And have we had any involvement with the utilities from DPW? And so do we have a sign off from Lucas on this?
All we're saying is this is a main corridor. We're not saying are there or aren't there lines at this point. We're just defining planning units that need more investigation.
And how are these planning units devised? Like how do we come up with this? Is this by population? Is this by species group? I mean, what's our?
It's by
Yeah.
use, isn't it?
It's by use, yeah, like what are the main corridors in town?
And is this
And
divided, I
function.
mean, is it divided by use that's platted, or is this? Like, I'm trying to understand the data that went into the influence of this graphic that we have. And who else has been aware of this or had input on this?
Nobody yet.
Okay,
We're just, I don't know if at some point we might have a public hearing on this and see if residents have a say in it, but this is just to get things to like a level where we can talk about what do we want to do on Main Street as a planning unit, what do we want to do on State Street. And some of these maybe we can't do a lot, but
does the public have an opportunity to have a comment on these issues? Like, is this something that's been presented to the public?
no, this is just this is sort of a initial, let's talk about it as a board.
So those are my questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Thanks. I think a big question in all this will be, how do we fund this wonderful plan? So I did just a brief dive on what grants might be useful in looking at. And you can see them on there. Donations, that's kind of what we've been working with so far. I think it'd be great to get the landscaper guys involved, tree guys, whatever. City funds, we are getting some more money from the city now, so that's good. Volunteer labor, like some of you have been to the relief plantings where we put in like, I don't know, what was it then, 15 trees, and then the year before 20 trees or something. So that would be another way to accomplish some of this. And then I think it'd be really good to do a search on what other communities have done. And in fact, you guys know Sue Irish Stewart. So her sister actually, I think, is chair of their tree board over in Charlevoix. They plant like 200 trees a year. So I think maybe it might be nice to invite her to come, if she would be willing to talk to us sometime about how they come up with their plan, how they come up with their species, and then also importantly, where do they get the money to do all this?
Sounds good. I think that's a great idea. Okay.
And so I've met her a couple of times. I can reach out to her.
Good idea.
And do we think maybe this is good to do sooner than later?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, it sure helps you know what worked for Charlevoix, what were the pitfalls,
Yeah, and how are they keeping the
Yeah.
trees watered, Yeah, so we can, once it's on the agenda, everybody can kind of be thinking of good questions to ask on that. Okay, Rachel, next slide.
So wait, I need clarification. So are we asking Victor then to reach out to Charlevoix and other municipalities?
He can, or I can. I don't know if he knows Perry. I can call Perry. Timeline, this was my biggest new development in PowerPoint world here. So where we're at right now is just kind of the beginning, planning units, identifying major corridors, secondary corridors, and neighborhood streets. So you'll see what's not on there is city property and parks and that type of thing. So we can talk about it more, but I think a lot of that is, I guess some of it could come from us, but I think a lot of it will come from parks. We're actually going through parks couple of months and determining what's needed. So that might be more reactive where street trees could be more proactive. I've gotten started on this infrastructure thing. It's really not been that easy to get the information. So Victor may have to jump in and help on that. I've got like some of this stuff, but not all of it. And I don't know if we even need all of it until we're ready to work on a planning unit. Like, for example, we could get it all now, but then 5 years when we do a street and there's been improvements, it's not up to date anyways. So then I think we decide what we want to do and what phases. And I just had some preliminary ideas that we'll get to, and funding, exploring these ideas, and then implementation. What's the best way to do this? More thoughts on that?
May I,
Yeah.
I may be asking you to back up a little bit, and you may have already covered it and I've missed it. But in this whole prioritizing the street plan, is it that the downtown streets, are they fitting right in to the main corridor, or would you separate the
Yeah, I
downtown
think
streets from the
this-
main corridor?
The central business district is going to be kind of unique because the timing on that is going to have a lot to do with the DDA.
Right.
So
'cause they
until
have-
they get ready to do their part of it, then we can jump in and help, hopefully with providing trees.
Right, so would we have like a subset then too? Because right now you have main corridors, secondary, right? And so
Yeah.
on.
So that maybe is its own planning unit. Yeah. Yep.
So when we
That's good thought.
prioritizing, we'd want to pull that out to talk about specifically the downtown, would you say, business
Central.
Central, sure.
District,
Sure,
or
sure.
primary shopping district, I think.
So I just didn't see that we've shown that. Put
No,
that
I
in
think
there.
it's just the Main Street corridor right now. And even that's a little different because what we do up at Bay Pines may be different than what we do from Bay Pines to downtown, which is different from, let's say the church, the rest of the way to the west with the swamp oaks that were put in last year.
Right.
So
Do you think that's something that we wanna,
subcategorize,
and
yeah,
actually show it then?
yeah, I think so. I think that's a really good thought.
Cause I know we got a lot hinging on when this master plan, the next one, and then funding, of course, and all that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just throw that out
No, that's a
there.
good thought. Okay, so I think our first priority has been given to us, and that is the 119 entrance into town, which we're going to talk about next. So I don't know if when we get to each of these might be like some good kind of criteria to look at. Like in this case, we have the overhead primary electric lines on the north side there. Across the street, we have pines, cedars, oaks, crabs, probably some other stuff too. The reason to note that, I think, is sometimes as you have a corridor, it's nice to tie the two sides together. So you feel like you're in a corridor, or instead of one thing, one side, one thing. One thing that's kind of interesting, and it's sort of shown in that top picture, is from the sidewalk to the utility poles, it's 20 feet. That's where the trees that just came down were located. But then there's another 25 feet from the wires back to the parking lot. So let's talk about that though when we get to talking about this project. Thanks, Rachel. To me, State Street is a big priority. So I don't know if we would tackle this year, and this is where we're going to have to get into priorities at some point. This, I think, again, Patrick, to your point, there's kind of two areas of State Street, and it's, south of Lake, north of Lake. Yep. South of Lake is very challenging. The boulevards between the street and the sidewalk are really narrow. I don't even know if they're 2.5, 3 feet, something like that. So it's not enough to put a tree in. I think the problem with that is it gets the pedestrians right next to the cars, which isn't good. And then did you guys all hear that they're going to be talking about 119 being rerouted onto Lake Street?
Yeah, I did hear that, yeah.
So that might change how much traffic is on State. There's overhead wires on both sides. Victor did say it's a 66-foot right of way. So I actually took a tape measure and went from the center line 33 feet out. And we could plant on city property on the house side of the sidewalk. So that would be something also to think about, like if we can't do it in that boulevard that we normally do. So I don't know if that would create a problem with homeowners. Some people probably be happy, some not happy.
Mhm.
Yep. Then we've got some retaining walls that are right up against the sidewalk. And then north of Lake, there's a precedent with these mature red fruited crab apples, and they look really nice right now. And I just think we have 6 months of winter. That it might be nice to continue that theme. Picture on the bottom there. Okay, so then just starting to look at phases. And again, this will need to be split out for kind of the subunits, but I don't know if we want to try and decide today, but what do we want to work on this year with street trees? So 119 for sure. Other ideas, we've talked about Ann Street not having many trees. Any thoughts from you guys on that?
Do we know when they're gonna be talking about the what's it called, the master plan for Main Street and that? Do we have a
I think it's
date
in
or
the
anything?
capital improvement plan. Is it next year or the year after?
Yeah, a lot of it's gonna depend on what MDOT and council decides, because if it's not a main highway, that gives a lot more opportunities for what you can do with Main Street, not making it M119.
Mhm.
So that'll be a huge factor. If it remains how it is, then that'll change the plan as well, because you you're in the confines of that, you know, you can't expand
Yeah.
the sidewalks or really do much,
Yeah,
so.
well, I would, with that. Of course, we'd want to be well prepared in advance, so all that, even though it's soft.
If I had my guess, we're looking at a couple of years, nothing moves that quick with them.
Couple of years.
I don't
We're
foresee
seeing it on Monday, but we don't have to make any decisions.
it was a very like casual comment from MDOT that they're just throwing it out there. It wasn't like a serious conversation by any means. It was take it to council and at least have it be a discussion, so.
So with all of that, and those decisions, would it all? You know what I'm saying? Could we present and have some ideas that could be implemented before all that happens? You know what I mean? Is it all totally
All tied
hinged
together, yeah, so what the
so
plan,
closely that nothing could be done?
The only reason for that is you would hate to do a project and
I
then
understand.
tear up this, yeah,
Sure.
you know,
No,
so.
yeah, for sure.
part of the project is
long-term.
trying to get more uniform spacing between the trees and distance from the curb.
Yeah.
So that the parking spaces can align, so you're not opening doors into
Right,
trees.
right. And
So,
2 years really, excuse me, I'm sorry, but 2 years is really, I mean, that's not long term, is it? That's very short term in this grand
Yeah.
scheme of things, right?
We
So
actually
we're
went
working on,
out to bid for the first time, did have a list of 6 trees that the tree board had recommended.
uh-huh.
And I can find it, but I don't have it right on top of my head.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So I'm just trying to,
we want
you know, as you're
to,
looking
you're right,
at
though,
it.
we want to be prepared well in advance.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to recommend things that would hopefully stay in place for a good long time, right? So, I mean, the decision.
That being
made.
said, though, Ben will be the first to tell you the
Sure.
average life of a street
Oh,
tree,
sure.
especially in a planting pit like that. It's what, 15 years? Is that what you usually tell people, Ben?
Yeah, that's kind of the rule of thumb.
Yeah, well, that would all be taken into to the,
Mhm.
what we're presenting,
Yeah.
you know what I
So
mean?
we were, the list we came up with, we were trying to go with our diversification and no
Right.
monoculture type thing.
Right.
So, and then size and tolerance to salt spray and all the other stuff.
It really
I think
seems,
it warrants a relook.
yeah, it really seems important to me because, I mean, we're saying this is all on hold and everything, but at the same time, we've also seen recently where they're taking away trees and not, and putting in cement. So. The same.
Yeah, I can tell you one of those spots, I think they had tried 4 trees there and I don't know if there's something toxic in the soils or what. So that was that.
For whatever
Another
reason,
one
yeah,
was, I think 2 of them were in loading zones. weren't
Yeah.
they?
yeah, for whatever reasons, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We have some, in my opinion, some bald areas in town, which in
And
the
they've been-
middle of
they have
summer are gonna be
taken out
very
some dead
warm.
ones. It's good, I mean, yeah.
Because there's nothing green there at all. I don't know if anything can be done. I don't know.
Well, I know the DDA is looking at a bunch of stuff just besides trees. I think they're looking at benches and planters, and things like that, so,
I guess my
I don't know
opinion
if
is
there's
I
something.
see Main Street being a priority.
It is, but it's just, is that what we want to work on this year if it's gonna be 2 years off, you know?
Not far away.
So. How do we decide what the phases are? You know, these are,
This is Dana's just like
what about,
first step here.
yeah, I mean, having had a long relationship with trees in the city, we spend a lot of time with trees that are on Main Street, State Street and Street. And I would say for the equity of all people that pay taxes in the city, maybe we think about places that we don't spend a lot of time, like Hoyt or Third. Main Street's a tough one because there's really not a lot of places to put it unless it's a park or right in front of somebody's something. You know, but like, I mean, do we talk about what the phases should be before we start talking about what we're gonna do in the phases? I mean, should that be the discussion? Like, what is the goal of this meeting with this plan? Is it to ratify this plan as it's written? Or is it to start a discussion about each one of the pieces?
It's
that
to
we
start
have?
a discussion. I don't think we're anywhere near ratifying it. We have our immediate need to get something decided on 119. But,
So do we put each one of these pieces, I mean, do we start breaking this into sections, Dana, and then either ask for input from the tree board on each piece or put it to a vote, or how do we do this procedurally? This is a big document with a lot of information.
It is, so yeah, I think, if we kind of agreed on phases, but yes, we're gonna have some subcategories. I think the next thing, and maybe we would just table this, what's in each phase until next month, is just everybody to look at each of these planning units and is it in the right phase in your mind? And why do you think, what do you observe when you go look at it? I think. Does that sound like a good way to go? I'm not sure we're quite ready to really delve into what should be in each phase of this meeting. Okay, so let's, for the agenda for next month, then, it'd be our March meeting is phases.
Yeah, and just to tag along with that, I think to your point, what is the criteria? What are the questions we're asking when we're deciding where we're going to focus? And then where will be the priorities in that fashion? But what is the criteria for that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the goals of having a tree board and one of the reasons that the International Society of Arboriculture and the Arbor Day Foundation require us to have one to be a tree city is so that there is a public meeting where the public can have a voice in what happens in decisions. And so part of that is, I think that, if we present the criteria as to what we're selecting and how we select it, then there needs to be a time frame between when we talk about that and then we can have comment. I mean, what we had last time was, we had a resident that was concerned about a decision that was made and didn't feel that there was an appropriate time for him to be able to respond. And I think so. One of those things is if we're talking about these management units and we're saying we decided on these management units, when did the public have a comment or the opportunity to comment? And when was there a vote on these management units? Because that's the whole idea of having the board is, I think, is to have this collective discussion about what they are. And we're saying, okay, if we're gonna have these phases, then how do we select these phases? And I hear you saying that like this is your attempt at it. So shouldn't we have comment on what those phases are? And like what I'm saying now is that we see these rotations where we spent a lot of time talking about 119 and State Street and Ann Street or something like that. Actually, we don't spend a lot of time on Ann, but there are probably 4 or 5 areas that we talk about and then we start over again and everybody else gets kind of pushed to the side. And that's really not, I think, the function of what we should be doing if we're worried about the whole city. I mean, we don't talk about, like Snyder Street, Summit Street. I mean, Summit's not there, but they still have trees.
But it's a neighborhood, so that's kind of in phase 4. And then I also had this idea about a program, like a 5 per year program where the city would fund 5 trees and residents could apply to receive one of those trees. So that would be a way for people that do really want trees to get one in front of their house instead of us telling people you're gonna get a tree in front of your house, So, I mean, this could be all wrong, like maybe we need to each phase pick a neighborhood. This is just.
Sure, I mean, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, Dana. What I guess I'm saying is that
Yeah,
I would like to see if given my druthers, more discussion from the board about what we do about this. And
yeah.
what the priorities are, because you guys speak for the city, right? Like you're the you're the voice for the people that aren't here when they're there, part of that discussion.
So if I could make a suggestion, how about for next time then? We look at the phases and just 4 phases out. Does that sound good? And then we can.
Also think it should be set to Lucas. Because he may
That's a
say,
good
we're
point.
working on this street and the plan is next year. So that ultimately will
change
push it
things.
back. I would just
That's a
hate
really
for
good idea.
the public to discuss it and for the board to discuss it and then DPW say that's not gonna work anyway.
All about
It
this
really
week.
should go. So how about, I'll leave the note for Victor to get it to Lucas. And then have him look at it and maybe you can come to the March meeting and be part of that
Yeah, I like that.
discussion. Cause we're really leaving out the department that may put them in, so.
Well,
And I
would
think
say
another
like-
thing too is if everybody wants to think of like what might be some criteria that would help us sort these things.
Thank you.
So neighborhoods that need shade, neighborhoods that need traffic quieting, you know, just
Yeah,
benefits of trees. So everybody can come up with a list of criteria
yeah,
and then their stab at what should go where.
yeah.
And yeah, maybe neighborhoods come before some of the busier streets.
Well, and I think that, I mean, I think this is a great document that the tree board should review and look at and discuss the differences and stuff like that. So, and it could very well be that everybody reads it and says, this is great, this is what we want. If that's the case, then let's just.
Well, it's the first time everybody's seen it. So, yeah, I think thinking about criteria is gonna be important. Wonder if I would do like a spreadsheet.
You could almost do it like the project, like once you get the input from DPW, you could almost do it like the project input where you rate it and then Victor does, you know what I mean? Then he places on, I don't know, to me, that's,
Like our goals and objectives.
and then you look at it that way, you know, you rate them on a
Actually,
scale.
it's- in the past, we have had surveys that have been at least open to the public and people have commented, probably it's the same 12 people. So that-
So
that might
let's
be
discuss whether we want a survey, and that is the problem with surveys, the same.
One person gets respond over and over.
And I think like this is a public meeting and it all comes down to like how involved people really want to be in, and it's not our fault if they don't pay attention and show up and read what's in the paper, and like the information's out there, but they still don't care
Sure,
until
and-
it's too late.
And Jamie, I agree that sometimes we post stuff ad nauseam.
I mean,
people just
the-
don't respond. to
And
time.
when 19 trees is a perfect example. Like,
What are they doing?
like, it's been talked about for, like, before I was on council, they decided to take them down, and all we did since I was on council was approve a bidder.
Yeah,
So let's leave this for today though, but so for March, if everybody can think about phases, we'll put this in the agenda so you can be reminded. But phases, and then mainly like starting with criteria to help you decide what phases are which. And then Lucas will have a look at things too and see what he thinks. And then we can talk about a survey.
Is there like a list somewhere of like trees that are unhealthy and need to be replaced, or is that
that's our inventory.
just, okay?
So and health is relative, that changes. I can inventory it on Tuesday and on Wednesday, something different happens. So this
Right.
is all kind of, you know, what happens over time. There are rankings of the trees that are in city control. And part of the discussion that we've had too is whether or not we need to expand it, because right now we inventory trees that are in major parks or in sidewalk squares and a couple other places, but it's not exhaustive. So like, you know, actually
So
the
that would
point that
be a
Anna had
criteria,
earlier
for example.
is that there are city properties that extend beyond where people think we own trees. And so there are trees that the city owns and they're not in inventory. So our snapshot of what we're really doing and replacing and losing and changing is kind of a partial picture.
So let's make that a criteria, not talk too much more about it today, but one of the criteria would be you know, numbers of mutilated trees, like on Lake Street. I guess that's why that got a high vote with me. You know, just mutilated or diseased or whatever. So yep, okay. Rachel, if we could move on to the M119 corridor
Did
street.
we approve the minutes from last month?
Sorry?
Did we approve the minutes from last month? Did I totally missed that?
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
we had Jamie and Gail.
Jamie,
Real quick, Dan, when you say mutilated, are we talking about pruning damage or?
Yeah.
And on,
Lake,
you know, at one point, we had talked about having a requirement of working on city property and adherence to national standards. And when Fred Guter was city manager, it was like an executive order that was supposed to happen, but I don't know that there's anything in city policy that requires it.
so that's under goals and objectives, if we could hold that until we get to that point. Let's move on to this M119 plan. And I'm very sorry, guys, but just a couple of new ideas, so we'll get there. And I put this together because I just feel like at some point we're gonna need something to send in with a grant request. So that was the thought on that. So first page, just an overhead, and if you can see the two black arrows there, that is the stretch, which there are no trees in right now. And we go on to the next one, and as we discussed, you know, what we have across the street there. And you can start to see what's on the north side that we're dealing with. So you've got like a 6-foot boulevard type median thing, then the sidewalk. Then we have 19 feet to the wires, and then we have 25 feet to the parking lot. So just some more pictures.
19 feet from the wires is to the center line of the road. Or is to the edge of the apron. So the wires are the edge of the city right of way.
No,
We
no,
have,
if you go on Emmett County map, it goes all the way to the parking lot.
so you're talking about the aerial map.
Mhm.
And we have a 66-foot, I mean, one word of caution, the aerial maps are taken from airplanes at certain points in time. And so if you look at a lot of those property lines go through people's houses. Like we may not go all the way to their parking lot. If we have a 66-foot
You can
easement.
see where the red line though is, that is the parking lot.
Right, but I'm saying that is not representative necessarily where.
No,
the
it could be
property-
off a little bit, but it's not gonna be off 25 feet.
It can be off as much as 15 feet.
Okay,
So I'm
Let's not get-
not
let's
to be
not get
argumentative,
hung up,
but I'm just saying
yeah.
like.
okay, Rachel, next one. So this is kind of an illustration looking down that way, what the dimensions are. So we've thought about like, should we try and stick to south side of the wires, or do we want to consider doing something between the wires and the parking lot? So nothing was there before. Finally, when the snow melted, I could see all the trees were ground on the street side of the wires. And I think actually just for simplicity and not to complicate things, we would try and stick to that. So here's my list of what I'm thinking. So last time Ben had recommended the Cleveland pear, and there were a number of letters saying that it is invasive, and there was a letter that came out in January saying that it actually is being banned in the state of Ohio. So that is off the list. Here's the latest thoughts on what we could do. Teresa, you had talked about evergreen. So the only thing that's really gonna stay small enough and not get into trouble is that northern white cedar, also known as the swamp cedar. What I like about it, it's native to the area. It's evergreen, so it looks great all winter. It's a wildlife food source and habitat. It's very adaptable, and it's moderately tolerant to salt spray, but these trees are gonna be, I think, far enough back, and there are some that are exactly in that spot that are having no trouble at all, so I feel good about
I
that.
called it again.
But
It's a 50 feet. 30 to
yeah, but
50
they're
feet.
also very, this is one of the trees that you actually,
States 120.
you also can keep them trimmed to a size.
And. But I'd like to back up a little bit if we could. We had a discussion about calorie pair because it was part of the list that you introduced originally. This is not Ohio, and we don't have an issue with them reproducing in Michigan because they don't. If we follow that criteria, which is that they readily reproduce without being prompted, then we have to focus on crab apples, which reproduce much more rapidly than calorie pears do. If we're gonna follow criteria, we have to follow them both, I think. And the reason that we discussed, again, calorie pears, because we're trying to follow the rule that we set up before, which is the 10-20-30 rule. We don't want to have more than 10% of our inventory made up by one particular genus. We don't want to have 20% made up by a particular species, 20% of a particular genus, or 30% of a family. And with crab apples, we're already in excess of all of those numbers in our inventory. So what we'd really be asking tree board to do is to vary from policy already to accept a crab apple in an area where we're gonna have a high population of crab apples. Which, I mean, we could do that. We can have a crab apple management unit, but we have to understand that that brings in more issues that we have to deal with. as far as.
And I think we have to accept that there is no perfect tree. Why don't we go through the rest of this, and then if you have some comments, let's do that. We talked about the crabapple last time. I think it would just be wonderful there. There's red fruited crabs across the street. Super hardy, disease resistant, has some fall color. And then the beautiful showy flowers in the spring, and then the really showy red fruit in the winter. It's a great wildlife food source and habitat, and it's adaptable and go do very well there. And I think this is, going to be an inhospitable place. Then this is another new one that I like, and this is a new variety of the black tupelo, also known as the black gum. And it's native to Michigan. This is known in great part for its radiant fall color. So what I like about this plant palette is we've got evergreen covered for the winter. We've got spring flowers. We've got fall colors on 2 of the trees. We've got berries for winter. And I think this would be a nice palette. And if you go to the next one, Rachel, I left the Japanese tree lilac on there that we had been discussing. This is summer flowering, which is kind of unique. It's yellow fall color. Doesn't have any significant fruit that would be interesting. So my recommendations would be the first 3 there. There are smaller cedars, arborvitaes that we could consider that wouldn't get so tall if we're worried about that.
I think Lucas mentioned to try and stay under 20 foot.
And Victor said that that would be, most of the trees we're looking at,
Looks like most of them are.
in captivity or, not in the middle of a field, aren't going to reach that 100-foot potential. So thoughts, what do you guys think?
I like this palette personally. I like having the evergreen, I like the flowering, and I love the shape of that tupelo. Aside from the color, it has an interesting shape.
It does. And it has really glossy leaves during the summer.
Yeah, I really appreciate your hard work, Dane.
I have kind of a silly question about the crabapple trees. It's probably gonna sound ridiculous. But with the skate park there, Ben, crabapple, they just fall right under, like, there's not gonna be fear. I'm just thinking of the skate park remodel that's gonna happen right there. It's all gonna be
How close are they
concrete,
gonna be to this? I mean, there was,
not,
most of the comments that we got from the last meeting were people concerned about the fruit for crab apples. We had one person that said that it was, the Calvin pears would be a problem for Ohio, which we're different climates, but
well, I'm worried about
I
it.
don't think if the fence doesn't surround them.
It's not gonna be a fence anymore.
So it'll be open, but they're still gonna be pretty far away.
Okay, that's fine. That was just.
I don't know, I mean, like,
I just don't wanna be like going from picking up pine cones, now picking up crab.
Yeah, and Rachel, like,
so.
these are not
Okay.
old fashioned
Okay.
ones that drop all over.
That's my
This
question.
is considered persistent red fruit, persistent meaning it.
I know that seems
Look at all
ridiculous,
things
but
out
like-
there. That's smart.
And to add to that comment, like, you don't have the altitude, like,
Okay.
you're talking, it's not gonna fall quite as far as.
Mhm.
Okay.
We don't have any Missia or black gums in inventory. It is native to the far southern corner of Michigan though, so I don't know of any cities that have planted one. In a winter like this, I would think that it would be fine. But it's in the south, it's a big tree. I mean, it's huge.
That's why we're looking at the Green Gable. This is a newer one that looks like it stays smaller.
So, its pluses are we don't have any. Minuses are we don't have any history, so we don't know, and I don't have anybody that I could talk to say, like, how do you feel about this? I don't know of any of the local growers that have grown one. So I couldn't, I can't even get comment from the Hoffmans or anything as to whether or not they've had success with them in nurseries. And I think that's kind of one of the discussions we've had, which is that in some of these areas where we've used lots of the same stuff for 40 years, we're gonna have to try new things.
Get the nurseries growing them.
Yeah, and they are probably readily available from southern Michigan. I mean, we could probably find one, you know, in Grand Rapids or Ohio or something like that. Somebody will have, yes. Actually. Let me see if I can find one on the list of you guys talk.
Yeah.
Gail, that's.
I like the color palette and the shape also. I mean, there's a difference between the crab apple and I'm sorry if I can't read right because my eyes are dilated, but the black tupelo. I like those three. I don't know where the Japanese tree lilac fit in there. That's just another.
I think there's gonna be a use for that in our street tree plan. I don't think it has anything to do with what's across the street though.
Right, okay.
So, I think we'll use it for sure. Jamie?
May I just add?
Yes.
And I brought this up last month as well, you know, and you were just talking about, you know, this whole, you know, maybe is there somewhere we can go anywhere? I don't know if anybody, who knows, with these projections of these climate changes, you know, you're talking about environments that they can thrive and that sort of thing. So is there a place that we can go for this? Does it matter? Are we just assuming that everything is going to be climate will be the same that we've had for the past 20 years? Is that smart to assume that? You know, I don't know the answer to these things.
I
I'm
don't
just
know the
asking the
answer
question.
either.
But do we, because we don't know, are we going to be satisfied to assume that things, because it doesn't seem to me that things are anything but normal as far as our weather and patterns and that sort of thing. So should we at least put that down as something that we want to look at and look into and consult who we can possibly?
Yeah, I don't know what you think about this, Ben, but for the life of these trees, along here, do you feel like things will change that much in the life of these trees? Or you would not use them or use a different tree?
I think if I'm understanding the question, like what we're really looking at is there enough range on either side of these plant species to accept, you know, a significantly changing climate? And when we say significantly changing, I mean, we really have to look at like what does that mean? Like we're talking about like 4 degrees, right? Like when we're talking about hardiness zones on plants, we're talking about intervals of 10 degrees in the negative numbers, right? So from 30 degrees below zero to 20 degrees below zero, and that following some specific pattern. I don't know that a tupelo will survive 30 degrees below zero of any sustained time without significant snow cover. They're just not cold hardy in the root systems, but we haven't seen that temperature this year, right? So on the other hand, if it shifts 10 degrees hotter, that tree will love it. So, you know, the crab apples are pretty evenly spaced. They're in the middle of, you know, it could get warmer or colder, and it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of difference as far as shade tolerance and stuff. I think that I don't know that I would plant trees betting on it changing significantly. I think that right now we probably would be best suited by picking things that have a little bit of positive and negative latitude in their site selection. And I think that this actually is what we have. I mean, I think that like white cedars will grow significantly north of here, meaning that if it gets colder and we have a longer winter or shorter grow season, they would be okay. I think that if it gets warmer, they still exist pretty far south. So, I mean, if you think about, if you picture a map of North America or any place, as things get warmer, species will migrate either north or south. If things move north on that map, you know, these things all are trees that exist significantly south of us. And all of the suggestions we've had have been that way. Several of them would actually benefit from a changing environment a little bit. If we're talking about sequestering carbon, like how much carbon we can put into a tree to take it out of the environment, bigger is better, and it really doesn't matter. Like, you just want something that grows really, really fast and gets really, really big. Unfortunately, those trees are kind of fast growing and big are not great. Like, we don't like those trees because they have a tendency to be weak wooded and cause problems. So does that?
I'm so sorry, I think we've got to keep moving along here. We've got more stuff to cover still. But let's,
I appreciate all of you, but I got a lot to do today.
yeah. Yeah, and we do too. Let's see. Okay, so I think there's one more pertinent slide here. And this is just a rough idea of what a sample plan might look like. Somebody had mentioned, you know, let's stagger them a little bit, and I like that idea, make it look a little more natural. So let's say the one with the little crissy crosses are the cedars, and the more open ones are the crab apples. And then the little bit bigger ones, fluffy ones are the black tupelos. And I think it'd be just kind of a nice naturalistic planting, which is kind of what we have going across the street. The other option is to just line things up in a straight line, which I think is somewhat less interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, do you guys agree that maybe we're best served to just keep the trees on the street side of the power lines rather than to try and do anything by the parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now.
All right, so I think the only thing that remains in my mind is whether we stick with swamp cedar, the northern white cedar, which can get bigger. Or do we go with like Niagara arborvitae that would stay more like 20 feet? Yeah, do you have a short answer?
To answer the first question, black gums are available in southern Michigan, so we can find them from 2 different sources. So what we can get from somebody. I think if you're gonna wanna plant trees and you're worried about the way they look, I think the Niagara is a better choice than, I mean, like, it's a variety that's fairly hardy, it's easy to plant, it's got tighter foliage, it's readily available.
All right, let's, I'm gonna recommend we switch to the Niagara. We're gonna have less worries about it getting too big. It's Niagara, it's a variety of white cedar.
Yeah, Thuja occidentalis.
So we're
Nice.
changing basically the white cedar species.
We're
To a
just adding a cultivar.
It's a Niagara, it's the cultivar Niagara.
I'm just gonna put white cedar change and you guys can. You guys can figure it out.
Ruined it.
It's
Uh,
fine.
Ruined it all.
Rachel, do we need a vote on the plant palette or can we just have consensus?
You just have consensus. I can't
Good.
imagine it.
Are we? All good?
We can do it just 3 days. Everyone in favor
It's
today.
anti, so
Yeah. And Ben, are you in support of it?
doesn't matter. You guys are the ones that make the decision. I provide input, you guys make the decision. This is.
Okay, what I think we should move on to now is, Victor wanted us to get started looking at Arbor Day, so if you want to pull that one up next, Rachel, and I think if anything's gonna flow over into next time, maybe it would be these, the goals. Because a lot of them have to do with Victor and he's not here.
When is Arbor Day?
That's what we're gonna talk about, so.
We don't do that.
You could find that handout. So for people that were on tree board last year, here's just some images of our first 2 Arbor Days. The first one was at City Hall. And we did a project with Relief, which is a national organization that provides trees if you provide labor. And we had a really good turnout. And do you remember how many we planted? Was it 28,
The
27?
first time,
Mhm.
22.
It was a whole lot of fun. We learned a lot about how to plant trees. That's how we hooked Patrick in.
Well, we had. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, that would be, we had 28 trees that were planted as the National Honor Society and DTE grant, I think, that Mark Gilbert worked
Yes,
on. And then really this.
this was really, the first one was really, yeah.
Petoskey is also gonna do an Arbor Day this year.
What's that?
Petoskey is gonna do
Good,
an Arbor
good.
Day event. But they reached out to see what day ours is, so they don't.
LA, we did ours first, of course. So it was just a nice diversity of trees. We learned a whole lot about planting trees. DPW helped by digging the holes, so it wasn't, as much work as it sure could have been. This is last year's Arbor Day, which was a ball. That was at Kiwanis Park. That would be Ben and all of his tree climbing gear. And so he did demonstrations and then he was sending people up the tree, including Rachel. That was very popular. And then the next picture, we did a kind of a bird feeder craft, you know, focusing on wildlife. We were trying to also focus the park. So Trevor, who works for Rachel, was there doing disc golf demonstrations and letting kids try it. We had some other stuff Patrick did, kind of a nature art thing, like what art you can make with nature. I did a walk and talk on tree identification, and we got our first, I don't know if we had 12 different little tree tags that are now there, identifying trees. So 2023. So kind of three main decisions, I think, and there may be something I'm forgetting here. Where do we want to hold it? Kiwanis Park was a great place. There's a lot of trees there. Be fun to feature another park. But I don't know where it would be or what we would do there that would it would be good. Any thoughts, Rachel? I mean, if we had a park where we did need
Definitely
some
are.
trees.
As many with the trees like Kiwanis has, where you're gonna have the trails and all that.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about from our notes discussions last year is we thought it might be good for Ben to do a pruning demonstration. You know, how to prune a tree. So we'd have to be somewhere where there's a tree that could be pruned, or you could bring one, I suppose.
I was gonna say, we can prune any size tree.
Yeah, that is true.
Shouldn't we?
I'm just thinking like, you know, how to use loppers, how to use hand pruners,
Yes,
where
knowledge.
in the branch do you make that cut, you know?
I mean, we could, oh.
I don't think
Where
there's
do, I
any
mean,
hurt-
like, we really wanna do this in a way that when people are learning, people make mistakes, we might not want to inflict that on city trees.
Do you have a park grade tree that you could bring and just like hack it up, or I don't know?
Well, one of the things we might do if like the DPW is doing any like line clearance or anything like that, is just say branches. Then we would really just need to like ratchet strap them to a picking table. People can cut on them, we can't harm anything that's living, right? We can talk about branch collar, we can talk about angles, just by saving brush and stuff. Depending on when we do this, we might be able to find other branches of some type. So I mean, there are resources, we could do some of that stuff that,
They have a bunch of trees marked out on 119 for that culvert project, so there'll be a lot of stuff coming down there.
yeah, and I'm just thinking whoever's cutting something close by is probably gonna.
Yeah, that's true.
So we can reach out for that, and then we can also talk about, or I could walk people through the stuff that's here by City Hall or whatever park we have. It's easier to do it on small trees. I guess we can dial this in.
So let's maybe think about the activities and then maybe which park it should be at could follow. So pruning, that seemed like a good idea.
We could drag people up trees again too. I could take a break from there.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was popular.
We need to get more people. I'll try to get a hammock so we can put a hammock up on the tree.
Right. I was thinking about, you know, it was really nice to have the speaker, Eric Hemingway, the last one. He talked about the history of trees and the Odawa. I don't think we want the same speakers every year. But maybe there's somebody enough that we could find. If we come up with a theme, so what theme could we have? That'll sometimes help everything else fall into place.
What was last year's theme?
I don't know, was there a theme?
Arbor Day.
Yeah, they're all
Celebration
Arbor
of
Day.
trees. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we had some really great ideas. I like the idea of having people be able to do different things and walk and having lots of space. I
Yeah,
think
so that was,
worked out
oh,
well.
plant communities, we were talking about that, like what plants are found in the same ecosystem.
I mean, we could use the same site and change topics, which I think might not be a bad thing, because we had a lot of space. We also got some like disc golfers that were interested in some of the stuff we were doing, so we had some like accidental participants, which was kind of nice.
The other nice thing about Kiwanis is you have that building, so if the weather isn't excellent, you have another, not that you couldn't run a ton for any place, but.
Just one other thought,
Location.
we just had started these preliminary discussions about like, would it be nice to have a little arboretum in Harbor Springs? And that was a toss-off comment from Victor when we were planting trees back over here. So we have all those trees and we've got the trees on the spillway and maybe some of them need pruning. There's some big trees you could climb. Would we like maybe have volunteers help clear a little path through the trees? Or is that a bad place to do it because the power station might go there and we don't know what's gonna happen? Is it gonna mess all of that up anyways? Maybe that's not a good reason for that reason.
I think today I would focus on a place and a date and time. Yeah, it's just a good place to start, probably.
I think hosting it in the same place helps people to look forward to it because they're, oh, this was in Kiwanis Park and now, oh, are they gonna do that thing in Kiwanis Park again?
I think
that's a
that's a good point.
I like that.
Because they might not remember it was Arbor Day, but they remember there was this tree thing that was in the specific location.
I like that idea.
Do we like Kiwanis? Does everybody agree?
I think so, yeah.
So
Big
let's
space,
say
have lots of
Kiwanis,
trees.
and then just reference on date last year was Saturday, the 28th. So part of that is it's got to be warm enough.
The 28th of
May,
May.
I'm sorry, yeah. So just looking ahead at the calendar. The nearby date for this year would be Saturday, the 27th. For Saturday, the 20th, are there any school things that we know of?
I will vote for the 27th.
Okay.
Is there a banner for the event or no?
I think there is. I had.
Does it have a date on it or does it just have like last weekend and?
I don't even remember. Rachel.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have a feeling
It's kind of low brow, we like exit off and right above there.
Why you can passions and stuff, just something to think of when you're picking a weekend. The banner may say last weekend in, you know, whatever was decided last year. We're saying the 27th? Yeah.
And then how about for next meeting, let's come with ideas about a theme, if there is going to be a theme, activities. And things we could think of are crafts, like walk and talks. What do we want to feature having to do with the park? Because it's nice to kind of cross benefit awareness of the park. Other things we talked about is a scavenger hunt. So I think that could be fun.
I just wrote that down.
You did, okay, good. Scavenger hunt or tree bingo or,
Yeah, those are fun and interactive and
yep. So let's come with ideas to the next meeting. And a craft, I think, too.
you
And then
said they
maybe-
made bird feeders last year.
Yeah, I don't think that's such a bad thing to do twice. Unless you think something
I
else.
guess something, another simple.
I think we were like Googling Arbor Day activities, and then once you're on the internet, you can see what other people have done, and you get ideas from there. Yep. I think, did we do hot dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so many happen.
You were working hard.
I think it's
We
still
didn't
has some
pick a
left
chair
over
and
from
a
last
co-chair.
Huh?
We didn't pick a chair.
No, we didn't. Oh, okay.
We should do that really quick before Patrick.
Yep, I'm sorry, just real quickly. Here's where we are. Teresa and I talked and she's got stuff coming up and she's thinking she's not gonna do it. Gail's brand new. Do you want to be chair?
I just don't think that I would do the committee justice or the board
What
justice.
what if I said I would do it for the first 6 months and then we can see how everybody's feeling if somebody
think
wants to
that's a great
take
idea.
over? And maybe you and I would switch or something.
Yeah.
Patrick said last time he's not up for it, so.
If
We
we
have a
all
demo.
stare at him awkwardly, will he stay?
Oh, that might, yeah, that might happen. I got a while still.
Thank you, Rachel, for reminding. Does somebody want to make a nomination?
Yeah.
Feeler? Okay. All in favor? And then I'll nominate Teresa. Are you okay with
For
that?
co-chair.
Yeah, yes. Okay, all in favor? Okay. And then let's make a note in June, we'll just see how everybody's feeling about things. Okay, see you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Yep, that was the main thing we were supposed to do. So the main thing we didn't get done is the goals for 2023, so let's put that on for March as well. And I don't feel bad about not getting to it. The new thing I think we have to do now is just get this street and going in Arbor Day. Okay, any other new business from board members? No. Rachel, you all set?
I'm good. That's right, the black note for my hair.
Mhm.
Or probably two it up, but whatever. You good?
Okay, good. Meeting adjourned at 1:05.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
So I saw in the notes from last time that you talked about the tree canopy. And the
Forest bathing.
bathing
We
and
did talk about that.
White cedar.
Yeah, do you want to,
I already wrote it.
great.
So can I
Send them to me.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll look them over and then I send Victor